Hey everybody, Aaron Rift here from NoDQ.com to talk about some of the greatest finishing moves in wrestling history. Now, when it comes to finishers, I think that there's no really wrong or right answer, and it's hard to give an objective opinion because it's just a finishing move, and everybody has their personal favorite finishers. I'm going to try my best here to be objective and look at each finisher not just by how cool it looks or whatever, but how effective it was as a finisher. How over did it get with the audience? Did it win matches for that person? So on and so forth. And if the finishing move really fit the character. So I'm going to look at all those things in the name of the finisher, so on and so forth. So let's start off with Ric Flair's Figure 4 leg lock. One of the all-time great submission holds in wrestling history. Ric Flair wasn't the first person to do it, but Ric Flair's the one that made it famous. And when you think of the Figure 4, Ric Flair is the first person that comes to mind. So he's the one that really made it a world-class finishing maneuver. He won countless world titles with it, and he's won so many matches decade after decade. I mean, the Figure 4 is one of the all-time great finishing moves, and like I said, so many people have used it over the years, and now The Miz is using it. So it's something that's timeless, and people will always be using the Figure 4 as a finisher. Next is a very common finisher for the big guys, and I'm talking about the choke slam. The choke slam, it looks very cool. You pick up a guy, grab him by the throat, and just drill him into the mat. And a lot of big men have used it over the years with great success. Most notably, The Big Show, Kane, and The Undertaker. Those three guys, the choke slam has been one of their signature moves. So I mean, it's just a move that everybody knows, and it's been around for a while, and it's been a part of WWE history. I mean, at one point we had Big Show being chokeslammed, or actually chokeslamming Undertaker actually through the ring. So we've seen some cool moments over the years with the chokeslam. Next up, let's talk about a couple of tag team finishers. First, the Doomsday Device by LOD. I mean, one of the most impressive looking finishers. You have Animal hoisting the guy up on the shoulders, and then Hawk goes to the top rope and just does this clothesline. I mean, it looks so cool, and a lot of the time the guy just like flips over, and I mean, it's really sick looking. So that's one of the all-time great finishers, and that's a tag team one. And speaking of cool tag team finishers, I mean, you have to name Team 3D's finisher, the 3D. That's part of their whole trademark. They wear the 3D on their shirts, and that everybody associates Bubba Ray and Devon the Dudley Boys with the 3D. That's always about the 3D, and the crowd chants for it, and they want the table. They want to see somebody get 3D through a table, and that was always a very cool spot in WWE when the Dudleys, and going back to ECW as well, and then later in TNA. Just a really cool moment. You anticipate seeing the 3D, and it was always spectacular and always got a huge pop from the fans. Brock Lesnar's F5, one of the most devastating looking finishers, and only Brock Lesnar could really pull it off because it's a move that takes a lot of power. You pick up the guy, you swing him around, and then you drop him. Brock Lesnar's just so strong and so massive. When he picks you up, I mean, it looks like he's you weigh nothing. I mean, he just tosses you like you're weightless. I mean, it's incredible, and just a very impressive looking, visually impressive finisher. And not as much. It's not so impressive, this next one, but I mean, it is one of the all-time great finishing moves. Everybody knows it. It's very common, but I'm talking about the DDT. And when you think of the DDT, you think of Jake the Snake Roberts. Jake Roberts made the DDT famous worldwide. And it was very simple, but the way Jake did it made it memorable. And you had the crowd always chanting for the DDT. And you don't get that a lot with finishers. I mean, you get it with the 3D, and there's finishers every now and then that people chant for. But DDT is one of those few finishers that you actually have chants from the fans. And, it was extremely over in the late 80s. And even during Jake Roberts' comebacks, every time he'd come back, people would still chant for the DDT. Next up is another common finisher, the powerbomb, another big man type move. A lot of big guys have used it over the years. Vader, Kevin Nash, Sid Vicious, the list goes on and on. So many big men have used the power bomb over the years, and it's just very devastating picking up the guy and just slamming him right into the mat. And usually it's a big man that does it, but I mean, we've seen smaller guys use the power bomb as well and have been successful with it. Next up is another move that several wrestlers have used over the years, the spear. It's nothing flashy. It's it's not a spectacular move, but it's very effective. And it's based off football. Just spearing into the guy. Goldberg is the guy that first made the spear. I think a really popular finisher. And then you saw guys like Edge using it, and so on and so forth. And now you have Roman Reigns doing the spear now. So I mean, it continues to be passed on from generation to generation, and I think people will continue to be using it for years to come. I mean, it's just a simple but effective move. All right, next up on the list is the Sharpshooter / Scorpion Deathlock. Sting adapted the Scorpion Deathlock as his finisher in the 1990s, and at the same time, you had Bret Hart in the WWE using the Sharpshooter, and they're basically the same move, but the thing is, it doesn't matter which show you were watching, you were seeing that move being used to win championships. So, I mean, definitely one of the most high-profile submission holds of all time, main event finisher. And, it still continues to be used, and we've seen guys like The Rock use it as part of their arsenal. So definitely an all-time classic submission hold. Speaking of great submission holds, the ankle lock. I think Ken Shamrock was really the first guy that started using it on a mainstream level. And the thing about the ankle lock is I think it was one of the first finishers in WWE where you had guys actually tap out. Before that, you'd have guys just submit or say, I give up or whatever, but now you had them actually physically tapping out to the ankle lock. And I think that this was the beginning of a new era in WWE where you had more finishing holds where guys were tapping out, and all that due to the ankle lock. And then you had Kurt Angle start using the ankle lock, and he took it to a whole new level of greatness. I mean, he made Hulk Hogan tap out with it. He made Shawn Michaels tap out of it. Some of the biggest names in wrestling history tapped out to the ankle lock. So one of the all-time great submission holds in wrestling history. The frog splash. So many guys have used the frog splash over the years, a lot of names. I think that the two guys that are most associated with the frog splash are Eddie Guerrero and Rob Van Dam. Eddie Guerrero, he looked like a frog when he did it. So, I mean, he really did the very standard frog splash, but he made it his own, and he was really great at it. And then you had RVD's frog splash, which was something else, because RVD got extreme hang time when he did the frog splash. He got really high up there in the air, and when he landed, he would sell the move. So I mean, RVD really took it to a whole new level and made it a really spectacular finishing move. And speaking of finishing moves off the top rope, the flying elbow drop. Macho Man Randy Savage, no doubt, made that finisher extremely popular in the 1980s. He won championships with that hold. And then we've seen other superstars do the top rope flying elbow drop. We had Shawn Michaels adapt it in the mid-90s, and he would win matches. Well, not win matches with that move, but it would be a setup for the Sweet Chin music. And now CM Punk is doing the top rope elbow drop as a tribute to Randy Savage. Next on the list is the Pedigree. Definitely one of the most dominant finishers of all time. When the Pedigree gets hit, you're not kicking out. I mean, I think that there's maybe a handful of people that have ever kicked out from the Pedigree. So when Triple H gets it on you, you're done. Triple H has won countless world titles, WWE titles, every title in the book he's won with the Pedigree. You know it's serious business. You know the match is over when he hits it. The Pedigree, I mean, it's just one of the all-time great finishers, and it can really hurt. It looks simple, but the guy's face is being smashed right into the canvas. So I mean, it's definitely going to leave a mark. The cutter, and there's lots of variations of the cutter. Most notably, Diamond Dallas Page's Diamond Cutter. The thing about the Diamond Cutter is DDP could literally hit it out of nowhere. You just don't know when it's coming, and that's what made that finisher so cool, because he could hit it at any time, and then that became part of part of the storyline and part of his trademark is that he could hit you with a diamond cutter anytime. It doesn't matter. And Randy Orton has started using the cutter, and it was actually DDP that allowed Randy Orton to use the finisher and said, "Why don't you use my finisher?" And Randy Orton turned it into his own. He had the RKO, and he put his own little twist on it. The way he does the move is a little bit different from DDP. And Randy Orton has had great success with the RKO, and he always gets people into the match, and gets people anticipating the move being hit. So Randy Orton does a great job with it. It's a perfect finisher for him. All right, let's cover a few more finishers here. These were actually the finishers that got the most responses from people. I posted something on Facebook and Twitter asking for input, what people thought were the greatest finishers. So let's talk about them. First off, Sweet Chin Music. It's Shawn Michaels' finishing move. It's Shawn Michaels. So, of course, everyone's going to love Sweet Chin Music. And the thing about it is that he could hit it out of nowhere, and he could hit it from all sorts of different angles and places. Remember when Shelton Benjamin did the springboard into the Sweet Chin Music? Lots of cool moments like that. And lots of historic moments in WWE. Major storylines were revolved around Sweet Chin Music. When Shawn Michaels turned on Marty Jannetty, he gave him the Sweet Chin Music, the super kick. And when he turned on Hulk Hogan, he gave him Sweet Chin Music, and that was the heel turn. So the Sweet Chin Music played an important role in a lot of key WWE moments and storylines. Next up is the Canadian Destroyer. Everyone seems to love this finisher. It's always talked about by fans. For Finisher of the Year on NoDQ.com's Year-End Awards, it won something like 4 or 5 years in a row. So, it was really popular. And, it's a really cool-looking move. Really spectacular. The only issue I had is that it's just not very realistic, that, the other guy has to do almost as much work, if not more work, than P.D. Williams himself to pull off the move. So, it's both guys doing the work there to pull off the move. So, it's kind of unrealistic, but, it is a really cool-looking move. Everybody has a high opinion of it, so, you have to include it in the greatest finishers list. And now let's talk about the top 2 finishers, at least in my opinion. First off, the Tombstone Piledriver. And just the Piledriver in general. The Piledriver has been one of the longest running finishing moves in wrestling history. It goes back decades. People have been using the Piledriver before I was born, before most of the people watching this video were born. Jerry Lawler was doing the Piledriver in the 1980s, and that was his trademark. He hit it on Andy Kaufman and countless others. And then The Undertaker started doing a variation of the Piledriver, the Tombstone Piledriver, and it's one of the most dominant finishers ever. How many matches now? 20 matches Undertaker has won at WrestleMania, almost all of them with the Tombstone Piledriver. So, all those high-profile moments at WrestleMania with Undertaker winning involved the Tombstone Piledriver as the finish. And, Kane was doing the Tombstone as well. So, how many guys? You couldn't even count how many guys have gone down to the Tombstone. And finally, the #1 finisher of all time, and I think most people will agree with me on this, the Stone Cold Stunner. Steve Austin's Stunner, a move that perfectly fit him. And the thing about the Stunner is another one of those moves that you can literally hit out of nowhere. And that's what makes it so cool. And, your lights get turned out just like that. So very devastating looking move, and a very believable move. And the thing about it is it always got a huge pop. And Steve Austin could do nothing else. He could just come to the ring. He doesn't have to say a word on the mic. He doesn't have to do any other moves. He could just come to the ring, give somebody a stunner, and the crowd is happy, and the crowd will go home happy. That's how over the move got. And then Steve Austin would come out sometimes and just clean house on all the bad guys. And he'd hit something like 10 stunners in a row, one after the other, on all the bad guys. And the crowd would just be going nuts. So I don't think that there's any finisher in wrestling history that got people so excited and perhaps made so much money for a company than the Stone Cold Stunner. It really was an icon of its own when it comes to wrestling finisher. So in my opinion, #1, Stone Cold Stunner. And I think that there's really no arguing. But then again, it is everybody's opinion. Everybody has an opinion. So let me know what you think. Which finishers are your favorites? Leave a comment at youtube.com/NoDQCAW. And stay tuned to NoDQ.com for all the very latest in WWE and TNA. Thanks for watching.